views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Justice Forums. I am Daren, Jaime, and of course, we thank you for joining us. If anybody asks the question, what exactly are the Social Justice Forums about? Well, we're a show that deals with a lot of the inequities that people face. We promote civic engagement. We bring you some great guests, and we try to elevate the conversation with good dialogue. So we invite you to stay connected with us. The Social Justice Forums begins right now. And welcome back. The Hellenic American Neighborhood Action Community is a multifaceted social service organization that's actually serving the needs of a most vulnerable population. HANAC provides services to over 30,000 New York City residents and also immigrant services with employment, education programs, counseling, and affordable housing for betterment of the community. And joining us now and sharing a little bit more is the Executive Director of HANAC, Stacy Bliagos. And Stacy, good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me here, Daren.
Thank you. And so for somebody, I gave a little intro into your organization, but please take a few seconds just to give us a little bit more of an overview as to a little bit more about your organization.
Sure. So I'm happy to say that we started in 1972. Actually, we started to really fit the needs of the Hellenic American community because there was such a migration coming from Greece. And since then, it's been almost 50 years. We're hitting 50 years next year in 2022. We've really grown into, as you mentioned, a multifaceted organization, not just helping the Greek community, but helping everybody in the community and throughout New York City. We have programs that are for older adults. Specifically, we have the older adult senior centers. Then we have adult programming. That's our family and child counseling programs. Our ESL programs, our immigration program. And then we have youth programs that are located in DOE schools throughout Queens. I'm happy to say that we realized affordable housing was a need for the older adult community early on. And we have over 400 units of affordable housing in Queens, specifically Astoria, Corona, and Flushing. But I'm also happy to say that we just broke ground at 1323 Boston Road. That is with partners, our Foxy Management and JLD Advisory. It'll be 2 buildings. One will have 8 stories, 86 units. The other will be 7 stories, 64 units. It's 150 units in total, 45 set aside for homeless, formerly homeless, excuse me. And then connecting the 2 buildings will be glass enclosed greenhouse. So I'm super excited to be expanding in the Bronx, but I also do want to note that we have a Bronx informational referral program that we've had now for over 30 years, where we help individuals, older adults, mainly with getting Medicaid, SNAP benefits. So that's a little bit more into HANAC and what we do and our impact in the community.
And you spoke a lot about affordable housing. We know that that's a huge crisis right here in New York City. And so to be able to have these housing units is definitely key and critical. But talk to us about the community that you serve and some of the challenges you found with affordable housing altogether.
So a lot of the challenges in terms of affordable housing is lack of resources and lack of knowledge. You have older adults not knowing how to even apply for affordable housing. That's why it's so important for organizations like HANAC to be out there in the community to help older adults, older individuals navigate through Housing Connect 2.0. If anybody knows anything about affordable housing, it's a lottery, and you have to go in and apply through Housing Connect. It's the HPD system, and it's a great system. But unless you have internet to go or a computer to go in and apply for that and to create a username, a password, and to input all of your information into that computer, it definitely is, the older adult population is one of that. You can have an older adult that is better on technology than I am, for example. Then you can have an older adult that doesn't even know how to turn on a computer. And so the disparities there are great. And so you have to really try and get the word out there of what those resources are so that these individuals can even apply. Additionally, the income bands for some of these, I want to just give credit to the city because this administration has done really a lot for affordable housing. There's definitely more to do with the next administration. But at the end of the day, there are some income bands that are still out of reach for some individuals. When you have an older adult, you're talking about someone that's living on a fixed income. So at what point are they going to pay their rent, their electric bill, their medical bills pile up because they need more medical care. And we haven't even spoken about access to food. So it's important to note that those are the main, I think we need more affordable housing, and lack of access to resources and knowledge is absolutely an issue. I want to end this by also saying one thing, and I'm sorry to say this. I just mentioned the 150 unit in the Bronx. We just opened Corona 2 years ago in 2019, and that was 68 units. We had over 35,000 applications for 68 units. So that just tells you the need that exists and how much more we can do and we should be doing.
Well, I wanted to talk about that because when we talk about the numbers of people that are out there, we see that the need is there. And unfortunately, we don't have enough supply to really be able to meet that need. And when you talk about housing, that's one issue, but I also want to bring it to another issue that we're facing in New York City, and that is of employment. And prior to COVID, we did have an employment crisis. I know now you could ask people, it's hard to get good work, but I know part of what you do is also helping with employment and training and helping people actually prepare for the workforce.
We do. We have an employment and training program, and that is actually the office for that is in Harlem. We actually also do security guard training. We actually get people to get their security guard license and walk them through that process. But we also do resume, interview review, all the things that you would need to prepare you for to get out into the workforce. The jobs are there. There are times that the jobs are there, but we also have to talk about the quality of jobs that people need to apply for, because we talk about living wage, but what does that look like? We really need jobs that reflect people's skill set and also give the ability to the individual that's working the right to live comfortably. We're not talking about getting rich here. We're talking about being able to pay for rent, for food, for your utility bills, and having that sense of pride of going into work. So we really pride ourselves on that. We try and get to the bottom of what the issues are, especially when people are coming in saying they've been unemployed for a while. Is there an issue that we need to address so that it doesn't get into the person's employment later on? And sometimes it's just they lost their job and they need help with getting another job. And that's also something that we help with. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah. And as we are navigating through COVID and coming, we're saying that we're coming through it right now, even though a lot of us are still dealing with the challenges and the ramifications of this deadly virus. Talk to us about really where we are post-COVID with your organization. I know that counseling is also there and supportive services, but how has COVID really affected your community?
I mean, it's affected everybody in the community, from older adults not being able to go out. I mean, if you think about it, when COVID first hit, we were scared. We didn't know if we were going out, you would get the virus going out. So we were able to secure food for all our older adults so that they wouldn't have to go out if they didn't want to. It was delivered to their home. So that's older adults in terms of isolation. That really impacted them. Then we have, I think I mentioned that we have a substance abuse program and we have a family and child program. The substance abuse during COVID was really on the rise. People just dealt with isolation and that they drank more, they abused drugs, and they were able, our program is also court mandated, but you can also refer yourself to it. And so we saw a lot of those numbers rise for that. We're very proud to say that we helped many individuals through this. I do want to point out that we have a domestic violence program, and that domestic violence was I mean, if you saw it on the news, it was absolutely on the rise because you had individuals that were being abused. Now you're at home with your abuser 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we were able to help individuals exit those relationships, whether man or woman, but also talk to them and give them the referral services that you need, because that individual that's leaving that abusive environment not only needs shelter, right? But maybe you need your high school equivalency diploma so that you can move on from and get a better job. Then maybe you need counseling because you've just been abused for so long that you need to get out of this and you need to face what's happened to you. So we were able to, unfortunately, all those numbers increased, but we were there in the community to help our members so that they can get out of this as much as we can get out of, because we're dealing with COVID, as you said, but
Right.
we're hoping that it's at the tail end and we're hoping to do even better. That being said, those numbers just increased tremendously during COVID.
Yeah. And I know that, as you talked about domestic violence, we've talked about it here on the show where we've seen that increase in number. Has your staff really been able to keep up with the demand of people that are actually coming and actually seeking assistance?
We have, as a nonprofit, a person working in a nonprofit always has like 10 jobs, right? So I will say that the staff is super dedicated and just passionate about the work that they do. And from start to finish, whether the case ends with a temporary restraining order or whether the case has to get to divorce and include more steps, we've been there, we've been able to handle the caseload. We hope to increase our staff, but I want to decrease the caseload because that means less people are in those situations. That being said, we're here to help anybody that needs it.
And it's important to be able to take care of those who've really been impacted like that. And we know those victims of domestic violence are many suffering silently. So the ability to come forward and be able to receive services is actually paramount in their lives. And take a moment for me and talk to me about another vulnerable population, that's of seniors, because we know that seniors are very critical and very vulnerable. They've been heavily impacted by COVID, isolation and things like that, but you've got programs in place to really deal and to be able to assist the needs of seniors.
Yeah, so we're proud to say that all our buildings we don't just do property management for our buildings. We also have social services that are in each of these buildings. And in fact, in the new building in the Bronx, HANAC will be the social service provider there. And so, anybody that knows that when you're dealing with a building, you have your property management and there's only so much they can do because there's a fine line when they're living independent. When people are living independently, there's a fine line of what you can talk to them about, what you can't talk to them about. But then your social service, having that social service component really makes a difference. I mean, talking to them about their, making wellness calls, just making sure that they're okay. As I mentioned, getting food, talking to them about Zoom calls, if they can get on Zoom calls. Other people couldn't get on Zoom calls, and having that half an hour conversation with that social worker really made a difference. Getting that card in the mail that said, "We're thinking of you," made a difference to that individual. And as I mentioned, it isn't just, when this first thing happened, we talked to the staff about trying to get individuals telehealth. And at first, when you first think about it, it's just, oh, they can just sign up, no problem. And it's like, well, wait a minute, they need an email address. And they need to remember their password to that Gmail or that Hotmail. That doctor now needs to send them that link. They need to click on that link, right? So we have to teach that to people, and you have to be repetitive, especially to older adults that aren't technologically as savvy as some others are. So that repetition really makes a difference. So we were able to navigate through all of those with the older adults. We're still navigating. The wellness calls are still in place. The COVID procedures for our buildings are still in place. But we do see them more and more a little bit more relaxed. Before, this was March of 2020, they were just terrified. And so we were able to get them through that. I do want to point out that it was really important to help them and to call them so we can sign them up for vaccine appointments, because We couldn't tell them to get the vaccine, but we could refer them to doctors. And once they needed to, everybody knows that in the beginning of trying to get the vaccine, it was hard to get an appointment. So even for me, I was trying to get an appointment and I was losing appointments left and right. So to have an older adult get that help from us really made that difference so that they can get vaccinated.
Yeah. And we got a few more seconds left in our interview, but I just want to take the time before we close out to talk about where our viewers can see some of the things that you're doing and how they can get connected to some of the upcoming things that you got on the plate.
Sure. I mean, they can go to our website, hanac.org, HANAC.org. In terms of the Bronx Informational Referral Program, I do have a phone number, 646-522-6965. 646-522-6965. Our doors are always open. Please come and ask for help. And that is super important. I just want to reiterate that. Asking for help is not a bad thing. There are rental programs out there that people may not know about that they need to take advantage of, and we can help them organize it. And if they don't feel that they can get to HANAC, organizations like HANAC can absolutely help them. It's important to ask for help. They can be helped. It's not the end. Please ask for help. Call us.
For you, I know it's got to be a very special thing before we go to really have the kind of impact that you've had. Just share with us how you feel your organization has really impacted the lives of so many people.
I just really happy. Coming to HANAC 2.5 years ago, I was amazed by the amount of work that people were doing. But then all of a sudden I realized some of the staff that currently works at HANAC used to actually be clients. And they've come to me and they've said, your organization has made an impact. And obviously we just look to make an impact on that person. We don't actually go and say, okay, you're going to work for us someday. But the fact that individuals in the community that we've helped have come and are now working for HANAC and making the same difference and making a difference in other people's lives, that's tremendous to us. And we want to continue that in the Bronx. We have maybe new housing in White Plains. So we're super excited about working with the city and the county of White Plains. So we're super excited to grow and make that impact, not just to the Queens community, but to further out communities. So thank you so much for having me and allowing us to spread the word.
No, thank you, Stacy, for coming to let us know about HANAC and certainly the work that's going on. A lot of people being impacted by the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for being with us here on the Social Justice Forums.
Thank you so much.
Alrighty, Stacy Bliagos, our guest here. Want you to stay with us. Guess what? We got more show, including another very special guest. Don't go anywhere. The Social Justice Forums are coming up right after we take a quick break.
We know that people are dealing with the health crisis, but there's also a lot of food insecurity.
We're giving out healthy food options, and that's what's key here.
If you're a senior, you have a disability, they'll actually deliver meals to you.
The residents are anxious, they're worried, they're scared, and they want to be tested.
When things were happening in our community,
and we couldn't get the help.
There's almost a presumption of criminality that attaches to your skin color.
The site will prioritize those who are at highest risk in the population.
If you feel symptoms and you'd like to visit one of these COVID-19 testing sites here in the Bronx, you may call the State Health Department's hotline.
Important to note about this site is no reservations are needed. This is a walk-in clinic.
A lot of us are out of work and looking for something to do.
We have the machinery and the skills to make large scales of these masks and gowns.
Take care of your people. It's going to go way further than we actually can understand.
Right now, employees like myself are just adjusting to the new reality.
Reporting BronxNet,
Welcome back. New Settlement is a not-for-profit organization that is actually aiming to break systemic barriers, advance justice, as well as promote leadership and strengthen neighborhoods right in the borough of the Bronx. Now, recently, the organization announced that it's been selected by New York State to lead the Bronx Anti-Gun Violence Initiative, which will engage youth from high-risk neighborhoods and violence-prone neighborhoods in community-based programs, inspiring them to inspiring them to participate in positive activities, as well as building employment readiness, as well as leadership skills and supporting the reduction of gun violence. Joining us now to discuss more is the Executive Director of New Settlement, and we bring him back, Rigaud Noel, and we thank you so much for being with us, Rigaud.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being back, Daren.
So I want to talk about this here because, first of all, congratulations. You have the opportunity now to really take the lead when we're talking about this gun violence initiative. And we know the borough of the Bronx has seen a lot of deaths as well as injuries and violence attributed to guns. But now your organization seems to literally have, and pardon the pun, the ammunition, some ammunition, to be able to combat this here.
Yeah, and it's a unique opportunity, actually. We worked with the governor's office as well as Assemblywoman LaToya Joyner, and she felt it best that New Settlement serve as the lead for this initiative, which looks at combating gun violence here in the Bronx through recreation activities, activities for young men and young women, and also developing a coalition of nonprofits, including the Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club and the Northeast Bronx YMCA. So the three organizations are really combining to join forces and addressing this initiative.
Yeah, and when we talk about addressing the initiative, we know what the problem is, but talk to us about how are you looking to provide some solutions and what this initiative actually will encompass?
Sure. So the initiative really is really aimed at engaging young men and young women in innovative programming where it gets them off the street, provides them quality instruction in different areas, and really gives them a safe space. And that's such a critical component to the program. So we are actually establishing a program for young men. It's a new initiative for the organization. And we're going to look at engaging 100 young men, infusing life skills, reviewing resumes, providing college readiness services, as well as workforce development, and giving them access to the community center where they can engage in dance, swimming, as well as gardening. And we also want to provide that one-on-one counseling and advisement for those young men. And so we also have a similar program for young women that we hope to expand. And that program has been in existence for the last 20 years. So we're super excited that we get the opportunity to expand that program from 85 young women to 150, which is super exciting for us. And that program is similar where we really focus on the emotional health of young women, as well as provide the college and career guidance, leadership development, as well as take them on adventure outings and really making sure that they also have a safe space. Because we know that creating that safe space for young women is very critical at this point in 2020, 2021.
Yeah, you talk about creating a safe space, and obviously there are some benefits to creating that safe space. I had a conversation with some elected officials recently, and they were somewhat surprised that crime seemed to drop during the summer when there was an issue. Well, I should say when there was actually funding available for programs. And I've always said before, where there's programming and opportunities for young people to be successfully engaged, we can see a drop in crime and a drop in violence. So I want you to just take up where I left off a little bit and share a little bit about that, because I know that this is one of the solutions in really curbing this thing.
Yeah, and this initial investment is really a drop in the bucket, right? And so this investment is really aimed to provide programming for the 17 zip codes the governor's office has identified with increased crime areas. And $250,000 is really, it's a great investment, but it's something that needs to continue and expand in order to truly address the issue and really give us the numbers that we need in order to really impact change on a larger borough-wide level, right? And so it's interesting to talk about the summer, because the summer we actually saw an increase in enrollment in our summer programs, right? And so students and young people wanted to get back to normal. And I think this is an opportunity for them to do that. And I'll give you an example. Last week, 2 weeks ago, we had our teen kickoff party. We had close to 200 teens lining around the block to gain access to this party. And we opened up the community center. They had a chance to go to participate in dance. We had a game room set up. They participated in our swimming program, and it was just for them. And the fact that we had such an outpouring of support for the program, to me, is just a testament that more programs like this are needed. And we hope that elected officials hear us. And I think this interview is a step towards the right direction, and that they continue to make the investments necessary in our young people.
Yeah, and the investment is key, and we know that the investment goes a long way. You're getting a return on the investment when you see our young people actually have positive outcomes, which is what the goal is, right? I mean, the goal really is to see positive outcomes and also be able to stem the tide of gun violence that's actually plaguing our community. Give me a little bit about your impact, because I know that you're making a difference in the lives of young people as well as in families. Talk to us about the impact that you feel New Settlement has made since you've really taken on this initiative head on.
Sure. So I think the impact we've made is, one, we've increased the number of teens we've engaged by over 250. We've also seen an increase in teens taking advantage of the free programming that we have to offer. And so that increase, to me, is a positive step, but it also shows that we're going to have a lot of kids participating in our program, probably exceeding what that goal is, right? And so the ultimate impact is that they continue to engage, because this program is actually only until March. We're only funded until March. And so that limited impact we're able to have over the next 3 to 4 months, we really want to continue to engage them after March and beyond, right? We want to make sure that they feel as though they have a support system in New Settlement and that our staff are here to support them beyond whether we receive funding or not. As an organization, we have to continue to make that investment in our young people. And hopefully they continue to engage, continue to be positive role models for younger kids, and they ultimately enroll in college and we help them get there.
Yeah, I don't want to poke the bear on this one, but I'm gonna have to. You say you're only there till March in terms of the program, but we know that when it comes time to really invest in a young person, 3 months, a quarter, a fiscal quarter, if you will, is simply not enough. How do you go about being able to continue with longevity to be able to deal with these issues of really trying to provide services for a population that really needs it, even though you got a grant that only sustains you really until March?
And so that's something that as an organization will continue to invest in. As an organization, we'll put up the money. That's the investment that we need to make as a CBO in supporting our local community and our local residents, because this is an important issue. Over the last year, the Bronx has made 1,000 gun arrests, up 22% from last year. So this issue is really at the top of our priority list, and it should be at the top of the communities. And that's why, as an organization, we're going to make the commitment to continue the program beyond March until June, the end of the school year. And then that gives us time to seek other funding opportunities from foundations or other city agencies.
What have you heard from, families who've been a part of this connection? Because when you talk about gun violence, there's the offender's family, and then there's also the victim's family. And sometimes when you're providing services like this, you find those people right at your doorstep looking for services and being connected. So talk to us a little bit about some of what you've been able to gain just in talking to people who may be directly impacted by this. What can you share with us about the conversation, the dialogue, and maybe even their desires?
It's so funny, when we had the teen party, we had parents dropping off their teens, right, to the teen party, and they said, finally, right? That was the common response. Finally, there's something for my teen to do. There are activities that they can participate in at the community center, and it's local. They don't have to travel far. We're right here on Jerome Avenue. And parents were relieved, right? They know that their teen is going to go into a safe space, receive instruction, be able to have fun, and really get them off the street before making any poor decisions, right? And so that really has been the common thread, that sigh of relief that finally that we have a program for teens, it's local, and they've been waiting for this for a long time. And we're happy that we can really be the conduit.
And give us a little bit more when we talk about where your teens are right now, because there's a lot of challenges that they have with this whole gun violence initiative. I mean, gun violence problem, but let's not even just talk about gun violence, let's talk about COVID for a minute. Because what we've heard in certain areas is where COVID has really, been rampant and people have been forced to socially isolate. You've had young people who've been at home and indoors, and they come with these pent up emotions. Some of them actually have taken to social media as their outlet. And when the doors open and people have actually back out, you have this violence, you have this aggression, you have these things that are occurring. Talk to us what you've heard about post-COVID. Well, I shouldn't say post because we're still in it, right? During the height of it, and how you've been able to really deal with our young people who've been coming out with these issues, and some of them have trauma, and some of them have stress. How have you been able to really corner that?
Well, it's interesting because during that teen party, there were a couple of parents that said we wanted to get Johnny out the house because it's just too much, right? And so the fact that we're able to engage them in activities and distract them from what potentially they may experience at home. And let's be real here. I actually feel sorry that young people have to go through this pandemic, because they will remember this probably for the rest of their lives, right? The fact that they have to wear a mask for 8 hours a day during school, that's a lot on a young person. And that's something that we have to take into, we really have to take a look at that. because the impact of that alone, right? What that weighs on a young person, knowing that every day they're going to have to breathe into this mask for the entire day. And it's a lot. And I think the fact that we're able to provide these critical services where they can go swimming, they can participate in dance, they can do arts, that we really want to give them an outlet, right? We want them to express themselves creatively. We want to give them as many opportunities and expose them to new activities to really get their mind interested and distracted from the day-to-day, because it does weigh heavy on a young person. But I will say that the ability for young people are resilient. And I think we often take that for granted. We have young people where they lost a parent and they still show up to school, right? We had young people lose a family member that was close to them and they still show up to school. And it's something that you can't teach that, right? Resiliency is really born in them. And the fact that they're coming to school every day, they lost a loved one to COVID, and they're still experiencing it, I think we don't give young people enough credit.
Yeah. The resiliency of young people today is amazing. And I think that you hit the nail on the head when you talk about a lot of our young people have been impacted, whether it's through COVID or whether it's through gun violence. And, you know, if you have shots fired in your neighborhood and then you get up in the morning and you go to school and you function, that's resilience. Or
Absolutely.
if you know somebody that's been impacted and been, you know, has been shot, or, you know, a family member has actually, you know, been, you know, affected in a violent kind of way, and you still get up in the morning and you go to work or you go to school. I mean, that's resilience. I think sometimes we do take that for granted in our young people, that everything's not so bad that we see, but there's a whole lot of great qualities that we're just, you know, sometimes we just tend to overlook, and resilience is one of them.
Absolutely. And we need to pick up our young people, right? We need to tell them you're doing great. You need to really uplift them and provide that positive reinforcement, because sometimes they're not getting it at home. The only time they may get it is here at the community center, right? We need to be very cognizant of the home situations that our young people are going into every day. And the fact that the best part of their day may be outside of their house. Think about that. The best part of their day may be outside of their house. And we really have to put that into perspective. And that's why we work tirelessly here at New Settlement to make sure that whenever we engage with young people, it is very positive and it's very uplifting.
Yeah. We got to leave it there, but I want to tell people before we go that they have an opportunity to connect with New Settlement. So I'll give you the last word so that you can tell our viewers how they can connect with New Settlement, the programs that you have to offer, and maybe something has intrigued somebody today.
Sure. So you can visit our website, www.newsettlement.org. You can also feel free to come by our community center at 1501 Journal Avenue, and feel free to take a look at our swimming pool, our dance room, our community garden on our rooftop, and I'm sure you will love it. And we can't wait to see you.
Rigaud, thank you so much for being with us in the great work with New Settlement. Obviously, if you're just joining us, they've received a grant to be able to deal with the gun violence initiative, and looking forward to being able to serve our Bronx youth at a higher level and hopefully impact and curb gun violence. Rigaud, thank you so much for the great work.
Thanks, Daren, for having me back.
Hey, glad to have you back, brother. Listen, we got to take a quick break. We do have more show. Don't go anywhere. We got another special guest right here on the Social Justice Forums. We'll be back in a few. And welcome back. The New York Foundling is one of the oldest, largest, and most impactful not-for-profit organizations in New York City. Now, the organization provides carefully designed programs as well as effective interrelated services and opportunities for community members to create transformational change in their very own lives. And joining us now to share more is the president of the New York Foundling, Bill Baccaglini, and we are glad to have you, Bill, back here. And how are things going?
Daren, a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for having me on. Things are going okay. I mean, look, I'm sure with you, and I hope you and your family have been safe and healthy through this. You know, haven't been easy, but you know, while we got a rhythm, ultimately, we did get a rhythm. As you know, we provide residential care to 500 developmentally disabled adults. Never closed a door. There were a couple of homes that had to be quarantined because of COVID. We still have some challenges with respect to vaccination rates among our direct care staff, but generally, families were kept safe. We moved to, as your work is, a pretty remote environment, but I'm pleased. I actually think we came through it better than I had imagined. When I was sitting at my desk in March of 2020, I was more nervous than I guess I had a right to be, because the staff stood up and made sure that the kids and families we provide care to and the developmentally disabled adults that we provide care to, they got the services that they need. That doesn't suggest for a minute I'm not excited about the clouds lifting and us coming out of this and getting to whatever the new normal looks like. But we did pretty well.
Good. And I want to talk a little bit about some of your programs, because obviously I won't say post-COVID, but as we're further through COVID, we know that it's had a direct impact on some of the work that you do, but you were still able to maintain services. And talk to us about how child welfare is doing right now.
I actually think child welfare is in a pretty good space. I still have my concerns, and hopefully we'll get to that about education. But I actually think child welfare is in a pretty good space. Every indication is, and I just reviewed our contacts with families in our care just yesterday afternoon, and we have maintained the appropriate level of contact with families through this. So we went to remote, but now we're back to face-to-face visits. So I think child welfare is in a pretty good spot. I will say this, contrary to what the data seem to indicate to date, it's just too counterintuitive of me to think that there wasn't abuse and neglect that went on during all this period that has yet to be uncovered. Right. And so I'm very, very concerned about, do we have those things in place to be able to drill down and identify those children, those young people who may have suffered abuse and neglect through these last 20 months? So that is a concern.
Yeah, and we know the family systems are also being challenged too. I mean, given the fact that so much unemployment, you know, how the educational system has played out throughout the course of the pandemic, a lot of things have really revolved and moved around. How have you been able to navigate, you know, basically providing services to families, given the times that we're in?
Yeah, it has been a bit more complicated. Let's take the charter school in the South Bronx, which you and I have spoken about it before. We care deeply about that South Bronx community, particularly the Mott Haven community. You know, during the pandemic, our families, because our school was a school with kids and families involved in the child welfare system, you know, they had challenges. 27% of them live in homeless shelters. They were afraid, you know, of catching COVID in a homeless shelter. So they'd leave a homeless shelter and go somewhere else that might even be, in actuality, less safe. Then we had families who were pulled apart because the breadwinners still had to go to work, the service workers still had to go to work, and childcare was an issue. We provided meals and meeting space for folks throughout the entire pandemic. In fact, I was up at the school a couple of times for grab and go lunches where families would, and we were their lifeline during period. And you have to overlay on that, Daren, the same time that, you know, the defund the police and the, you know, the crime rates and the crime in the neighborhoods I care most deeply about, the crime rates were the highest. And so it was balancing that. I'd have parents from the charter school say, hey, listen, Bill, we don't want to defund the police. We'd like for the relationship between us and the police to be a bit different, but we need our communities safe. I can't send my son or daughter out in this sort of climate. And so that was a challenge. But because we're a beacon in that community, I think most families felt like they were embraced and felt like they had support in getting through these last 20 months. So I feel good. Having said that to you, let me say this. The learning loss that occurred, unbelievable. There was unbelievable learning loss, the social, emotional stagnation that occurred with how do you tell a 5-year-old, oh, you just freeze in place there for 18 months and we'll get back to you. That's not the way it works. And so those were the challenges that we're now facing now that school has fully reopened.
Yeah, and I know because I was just having a conversation with someone just yesterday talking about if you were an introvert before COVID, you could probably be so much more ensconced in being an introvert now because of the fact that we just haven't been moving around and a lot of effects that I think that we're going to continue to feel for some time, and we won't even begin to feel certain effects for about another 5 years for what we see out of all of this.
You know what? You're exactly right, Daren. There's a reason why you have that job. You're exactly right. The mental health challenges that kids and families are going to have to confront this isn't over next year. This isn't over next year. And so we're going to have to stay vigilant. And I have my concerns about is the school system who is there to educate, but are they really prepared to confront the many, many challenges that they haven't seen before? Many, many challenges that are going to evolve and come out of these last 20. It may not happen today. It may not happen tomorrow, but it's going to happen. And I just have to make sure that the systems are in place to respond to those needs.
Can you elaborate a little bit more for our viewers about the education program that you have and the work that the New York Foundling is doing with education?
Yeah, we're very, very proud of this. 14 years ago, we opened up a charter school in Mott Haven called Haven Academy, and it was open to test an idea. And the idea was because kids in the child welfare system had historically their educational journey was not a very good one in the public school system. We said, could we use social workers to address those needs that have undermined their educational journey, free them up, and get them an education? And so Haven is comprised of 2/3 of the kids coming in the front door are kids whose they and their families are formally involved in the child welfare system. The other third of the student body is from the general Mott Haven community. And what we find, the results have been remarkable. Year in and year out, Haven Academy proves that this isn't about the kids, it's about the adults and the decisions the adults make about the kids, not with the kids, but about the kids. And Haven has beaten all the other appropriate comparison groups on state tests, but Haven is not without its issues. These kids, our scholars came back to school with a ton of emotional issues and with considerable learning loss. So we've had to take a step back, right? We've had to take a step back and the social emotional stuff for kids, particularly in the child welfare system, that's critical to us. I'll put education on hold for a week or two to make sure that Johnny's comfortable and Johnny's okay and Johnny's able to process what the last 12 to 18 months in life, particularly if Johnny may have been subjected to abuse and neglect during that period. So it's complicated, but Haven Academy is a beacon on Brown Place in Mott Haven, and it's a place we just love.
Yeah. I know that you've got some work going on criminal justice reform as well. Give us an update as to how things are going in the area of criminal justice reform and the services that you're providing.
Yeah, we committed ourselves some years ago to getting older adolescents off Rikers Island. We didn't think it was a healthy place for really anybody, but our concerns were the 15 to 20-year-olds that might have found themselves on Rikers Island. Using an evidence-based practice, we've been able to get those young people re-engage with their families or people whom they consider families. Fortunately, because of because of a lot of things, bail reform, there's a lot of things, and that's the subject of a whole other conversation. But we've met with some real success in keeping these kids out of criminal activity while back at home and re-engaged in an educational pursuit or an employment pursuit. So we're pretty happy with it. But the moral to this story is that, you know, wishing it so doesn't make it so. You have to be very, very purposeful, planful, and serious about what you do the day you and that young person leave Rikers Island. What's the plan? What are the check-ins? What are the metrics? And accountable in there, you know, as we always find with young people, when you give them an opportunity, they can stand up and they can meet the opportunity. So we're actually happy with it. You know, I'm a little concerned about, you know, the vitriol that surrounds the bail reform and what do you do at Rikers, and, you know, the people who make those decisions are smarter than me. I do know that the people we care most deeply about are worried about their communities and their neighborhoods being safe. And we do know that throw them away and lock up the key. We know you can't build an out. You can't prison yourself out of our issues. The problems arise in the communities. For the most part, the problems have to be resolved in the context of the community.
Yeah, no way that we can incarcerate our way out of our issues. I think that we all understand that, and something definitely has to be done. Talk about something has to be done. Well, we've got a new mayoral administration coming in. We've got one coming in, and talk to us. Are you optimistic about what we're looking forward towards the future with the new mayoral administration and some of the priorities and initiatives that you've heard so far?
I'm happy for a couple of different reasons, or I'm excited, optimistic for a couple of different reasons. I got to know Mayor-elect Adams through campaigning and advocating for our Fair Futures initiative in the city. That's where we provide coaches and tutors to older adolescents, and he embraced that like nobody's business. I mean, you hear him on the stump now, he's always talking about fair futures. I'm also optimistic in this other area. I was concerned that the conversation over the last years around charter schools had gotten so nasty that the two sides never came together to have a conversation. Listen, Daren, you don't scale in a city like New York, Haven Academy. That's not what Haven Academy was there for. Haven Academy was there as a laboratory to learn some things and teach the larger system, or show the larger system how you might do this and educate a million young people. Unfortunately, the conversations never got going, and you and I know what a lot of the reasons were. I am hopeful that Mayor-elect Adams will have in fact, I know he'll have a more open mind about charter schools and their role. Listen, these are our kids. These are our children. We shouldn't let the bickering between adults stop any conversations that might improve the quality of education for our young people. So I'm optimistic that that conversation will be a healthy one, and we'll learn from one another, and there will be feedback loops. I'm also optimistic that I think he's a bit of a risk taker. That's my sense from having met him a couple of times around. I referenced the Fair Futures initiative. I think there are few enough young people in foster care today, under 8,000. The city, it was only 30 years ago, the city had 50,000 kids in foster care. There's only 8,000. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to look at different ways of providing foster care. And you know, whether we go back to the professional house parent, there's all sorts of, and with listen, 8,000 is still too many kids in foster care, but when you look at New York City's history, it's an unbelievable accomplishment. I think it provides us with an opportunity to innovate. So I'm excited. I'm very, very excited about Mayor-elect Adams coming in, and boy, there's an energy level there that I really like. And to the current administration's credit, they did, I think, you know, universal pre-K, 3K. Those are very, very, very important initiatives. But I think Mayor-elect Adams will take these things to the next level. I'm hopeful.
Yeah. And speaking of new administration, I got only about 2 minutes left, but I just want to be able to talk to you because we understand there's going to be some transition in your organization as well, as you'll be transitioning out and someone else will be coming in.
Yeah, we at the Foundling are very, very, very excited about this. We weren't looking for my successor yet. My contract still has, I don't know, 18 months left to go. But, when I had a conversation with Melanie Hartsock, who is currently the Deputy Mayor for Human Services with the de Blasio administration, prior to that, she was OMB director. Prior to that, she was a deputy commissioner at ACS. Prior to that, she was with the Children's Defense Fund. And she and I have known each other for 20 years. We didn't know each other well, but we knew each other for 20 years. And through our network, we wound up having a conversation in which she expressed genuine interest in the position. I went to the board of directors and said, whoa, everybody, this is in many ways a black swan. The financiers talk about black swan events. This is it. If the Foundling's able to get somebody of her capacity and ability, we have to jump at it regardless of, I had my tenure. We think we did some good things, made some bad decisions, but we think we did some good things. But to grab a Melanie Hartsock and have her join the Foundling, to me, I am convinced because of our ability to secure someone like her, that the brightest days for this rich and great institution are in front of it. So I'm very excited about what the future holds for us.
And Bill, I do want to say it's been a pleasure working with you. And certainly we've enjoyed the time that we've shared here on the Social Justice Forums and our other platforms. You've got a wealth of information and we want to make sure that you come on back. So please come on back and share with us. You'll get an invite, but don't forget about us as well.
Okay, Daren, you're the best. Many, many thanks. And keep that voice in the Bronx loud and clear. Those folks need you.
Thank you so much. We're going to try to do our best. Well, listen, everybody, I want to let you know that we're at the end of our Social Justice Forum show. We want to invite you also to come on and join us next week for another episode as we continue to enlighten you, continue to elevate the conversation, to promote civic awareness and civic engagement as well. I'm Daren Jaime saying take care, God bless, and we'll see you next week on the Social Justice Forums.